All right. Great. It says it's recording. Hopefully it's good. This month, back on our regularly scheduled last week of the month meetings, we watched My Octopus Teacher, and today we will be talking about it. It's a Netflix original. Should have looked up who directed it, or even the guy's name, because I don't even remember who it is about. But it's a gentleman from South Africa who decides to, or is an avid swimmer, snorkeler, who's into film and photography and filmmaking. And he runs into this octopus, and it does strange things with shells. And he thought that was strange, so he went back the next day to see if it was still there, and it was. Little bit of a kind of a catch up before that. It didn't talk too much about what he did before, but it did kind of appear that he was in, filmmaking and camera operating. And he just got, from what I've read, just got burnt out. Just doing this thing, it just became a drag. He wasn't feeling, it wasn't sparking joy. If you want to do the Marie Kondo thing. And so he just kind of stopped doing it. I can't remember if it was also swimming and snorkeling, if it was just, filming and that sort of thing. Another thing that kind of plays in later was he was in the African bush at some point, and realize, and being involved or interacting with trackers.
Oh, right.
And how they can notice even the subtle, small marks in the sand or scratches on trees and stuff, to be able to find animals or whatever they're tracking, they can do it. And that kind of plays in later with him finding an octopus. I don't know what else. Without having to just.
Is that the only thing that's on screen right now?
Yes, it's just showing the screen. Yeah, that's a good idea. So what, I guess, it does kind of follow a linear progression of him interacting with the octopus. He eventually starts to come around it, and octopuses are very octopus. So here's another point. There's a book called Life of the Octopus, or The Life of an Octopus, that my wife Kylie has read, and in that it does follow some similar kind of things. But one thing was, the plural of octopus is either octopus or octopuses. It's not octopi, because it's not using the I is only used for words of, I believe, Latin origin, and octopus is not Latin. Therefore you don't use the I. And it's one of those things that, like, it's become accepted. Yeah, I think it's actually Greek or something, so you still use. Anyway.
We can go off on a whole tangent on that.
Whole tangent.
I want to know about hippopotamus too.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it hippopotamus? I think so. I think it is hippopotamuses. Anyway, that's, yeah, right. We can.
Right.
But I am not an English teacher, and my wife is not here to continue that conversation. But anyway, so yeah, so they're very skittish animals, right? I mean, they're soft-bodied, so they don't have much protection, so they have to use, their keen senses of and intelligence to evade things. So it took I think it took almost a week before of going every day to find the octopus. and it's a den, which I think is interesting that they call it a den.
Mhm.
And then eventually, you know, it reaches a handout, and like that's, you know, it's very small steps. And then eventually they start to interact, and the octopus can kind of go about its business, hunting or doing whatever octopus does while he's there. So which is a very big thing to know that this human isn't a threat. Until, of course, one day, he happened to drop his camera lens, spooked the octopus, and it left. It found another den. And so this is where that tracking idea came in. I think he spent a couple of days just completely mad about himself, frustrated. He's like, the call of the
He
octopus.
had lost it forever.
Yeah.
Like.
He kind of used some of the tracking skills that he had learned from the people of the bush. And again, it took, and he did, research and stuff on how do I apply this to octopus, and what do octopus tracks look like, and what is that different than, a shark skittish or, whatever. And he, had pictures of all these maps and stuff, and it looked like, his apartment looked like, what was that movie?
A Beautiful Mind.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of.
That was my recollection.
Yeah. There's
Like,
strings connecting
Beautiful
things,
Mind.
and he's like, you can tell he's getting closer because he's, finding bits of shell and crab legs and stuff. So, and eventually, of course, he finds it. It's hard to talk about this also without not just giving away things. But it's one of those also, even if you do know the whole story, like just again, that he's a filmmaker watching this is just it's almost, I mean, it's like Discovery Channel, like David Attenborough types level, I think, of just the level of the quality of the shots. And he's like recording it with just a regular like camera that can record video.
Like a water resist or water.
Yeah, it just looks like a Nikon camera that's obviously waterproof.
Well, and he had completely, it sounded like he had become just completely burned out with filmmaking.
Yeah.
Until he came, till he found the octopus, and that kind of brought him back to what he knew about, what his profession was, not just that, but what his love was.
Right. Yeah.
And
I don't know what he does as a profession. Like, it seems like he's not doing anything for this entire year. Like,
right,
does he
except going out to the ocean and.
Or is he retired? I mean, is he making? I don't know. I think also, so he also has a son who he's kind of teaching, and I'm wondering if some of the film we watch, because there's some that's like, well, how is he recording this? Because both of his hands there's very intimate moments where he's holding an octopus. I'm pretty sure, it doesn't ever say, but I think that's his son.
It is.
Those that are recording.
I would guess that it probably is, because the reason I think that, he mentions at some point that his son has come with him.
Right.
Numerous times and met the octopus. Yeah. But there are also some shots of the two of them, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know then if one of them's holding it or what, but it's.
Right. Or if they set it somewhere and, kind of auto-record it.
So yeah, there's that kind of weird thing, but the whole kind of story is basically it just focuses on this one man's relationship with the octopus. I'm gonna look up his name while we talk.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's one of those very, so it tracks over approximately a year, which is about the same, about
about the same age lifespan of an octopus. He said he interacted with the octopus approximately 80% of its life. So it was
Oh,
a
wow.
relatively young octopus
Okay,
when they first met. That's kind of weird to say, but
right, he said the lifespan was a year. It
yeah,
was like at 352 days or something like that, I
Mhm.
think, at the end.
yeah, I think so. So it's. That's definitely not. But that's interesting that that doesn't look
Look at IMDb and see if it-
yeah, that's what I was.
is that where we're at. Craig Foster, does that sound right?
Yeah, that's him. It's definitely him.
And Tom Foster is apparently his son.
So apparently there's a writer and director, which doesn't.
Oh,
So maybe, you know, I mean, it's one of those things of like, I don't know how you write that, you know, or maybe they told them, hey, use. It's like an editor of a book. Hey, use this part of your story. Hey, don't use this part. So
oh, that could.
here,
be-
here, I can help you like explain that a little better because
Right,
but-
he has all this footage, maybe they helped him put it together
yeah,
and tell the story.
I think that might be it. But I don't know. So I could be completely talking and making stuff up. So I will
Yeah.
stop doing that. Craig Foster is the gentleman who is experiencing this octopus. Uh,
Oh, it does say, okay, so Pippa Ehrlich,
Yeah,
Ehrlich, Ehrlich, is a director and a writer. And James Reed is a director and a writer. Oh, that is interesting, because it kind of makes it seem like it's all him,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. So I don't know how that whole thing works, but I don't care because it's a great story.
It is,
And that's what we'll focus on. Yeah, so then I guess the next kind of big event was him, and I think it was a very, very poignant part of the story was where sharks started to find the octopus and
Oh, right, the
attack it.
pajama sharks.
Yeah, pajama sharks, which they look kind of cute,
Mhm,
to be honest.
mhm.
I don't know if I can, I don't know if I'm, see, when I do this, I don't think I'm sharing my screen, so I don't think. I'm
Yeah,
recording it, so it's-
probably not.
But.
Striped.
I will. This one, I will share my screen to show people. These are pajama sharks, obviously, because they look like they're wearing pajamas.
Gray flannel pajamas.
Old school pajamas,
Mhm.
like your grandfather's, like bananas in pajamas. Yeah, and he's wondering like, was my interaction with with the octopus kind of attracting sharks or preventing the octopus from like actually watching to make sure. Anyway, so he felt somewhat responsible for it, which I think is quite a lot of awareness. But also he's like, I could fight them off, but like that's like, is that encroaching like the ecosystem and the balance of the kelp forest. And so I think that's a very poignant and again, aware and wise thought process and decision to make of, he knew where he stood in the system. He's like, he's part of, part of nature, part of the ecosystem, but also not really. So he's like, there is this part where I can't get myself involved.
Yeah, at that point, he's kind of a visitor rather than, a part of it.
Right, even though later on he says, I'm not just a visitor, I'm a part. So,
Yeah, he's
so
become that way by
Yeah.
going there every single
Right.
day.
Right. So I think he was very aware of his place in the kelp forest and when to be involved and help and interact with nature and when to step back and let nature be nature. Again, there's gonna be a bunch of spoilers. If you wanna stop listening now and go watch it, please do. It's great. But if not, here's what happens. The pajama shark eats one of the octopus's legs. And it slowly grows back. And so like seeing it every day, like, actually, there's a couple days where the octopus doesn't come out. Like it's just hiding and it looks weak. And it heals, but eventually heals.
Can't really eat, can't really move,
Right.
I mean, doesn't move because
Right.
it can move.
And I think
got
it's one of
back.
those mainly it's weak, but I also think it's smart that knows that it would be vulnerable if it leaves. And I think he does feed it. I think this is where he does, he does feel sympathy and says, this is a point where I do need to step in. He I don't know what he does. He breaks off
He tries to feed it. at
he
least.
feeds it a clam, like he breaks open
Oh,
a
that's
clam
right,
and feeds it, feeds her, I should say. So that's where he does kind of step into the system again. I think it's very interesting how I think no one can make that decision except him. It's that very this is he's the only one doing this every day. He's the only one wise enough to make these decisions, and I think it's very interesting and very insightful of his decision making of when to step in, when to step out. So yeah, so he watches it grow this leg and recover, and I think there's this beauty in this regeneration and becoming an octopus again.
I had forgotten that octopuses regenerate.
Yeah.
Their limbs. And there was some point where he mentions, I wrote it down in my notes. Oh, the fact that it lost an arm is kind of significant too, because not only because it lost an arm, but he mentions that 2/3 of octopus cognition is in their arms at one point.
Oh, right. Yeah. Their arms are connected to their brain.
Right.
I mean, they smell, feel, touch through the. I think they said they have 2,000 suckers.
I think
So
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could also be it. Like it's this idea of being stunned. I mean, if it's losing a leg, it's losing an eighth of its brain.
Right.
That it has
right.
to.
That it has to regenerate.
And what kind of information has it lost?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
The other portion so things happen. He watches his octopus grow up. And then the sharks kind of find it again. And it's trying to run around, it's hiding in kelp.
It wraps the kelp around itself, kind of like
Yeah.
it did at the very beginning when it was hiding itself from him.
Yeah, from the shell, in the shells. Yeah, and then he like the you know, it actually gets up on land, the octopus. And eventually the way it finally escapes is it first covers itself in a whole bunch of shells, similar to how the gentleman found him, or found her, excuse me,
Yeah.
at the very beginning. And it looks like like that.
Like that, yeah,
So the shark attacks it and flings it around.
right, the shark goes into this.
That does a
incredible
death spiral.
spin.
Yeah, that's how they kind of tear off
Mhm.
flesh and eat food, and that's just how it attacks. It's very, very bizarre, very, you know, traumatic.
Very vicious.
Looking. Unfortunately, he has to come up for air because he is human. And he's only doing it for, he's only using snorkels. And the water is, I can't remember what the water they said,
Oh.
but
it was
it's chilly cold. It's very cold.
Right.
And he does it in just, you know, basically scuba shorts.
He doesn't do it in a scuba suit,
Right,
he said.
or not scuba
intentionally.
shorts, just swim trunks, or, you know, probably just regular, you know.
Yeah.
Tight
Swimsuit.
swim pants.
Mhm.
Where was I going with that? But anyway, so
We
yeah,
were talking about, we were talking
so he has to
about the
go,
shark.
so he has to go up for air. And so he comes up for air, comes back down. When he does, the octopus is like, still has the shells and riding on the back of the octopus,
Right, somehow
like a-
she maneuvered herself up on his back.
like a cowboy
Yeah.
riding a bull,
Right.
which, and it's bizarre because it's like,
Fascinating.
A, how did it get like that? And then B, eventually it, you know, lets go and sheds its
shells again.
shells. And but what does that, like, it's interesting that the shark now knows that it's been bested, but like, what,
Right.
where does that come from? Like, that doesn't prevent any other shark from attacking her, but it makes this thing of like,
Mhm.
the shark tells all its other sharks, hey, don't attack that octopus because it'll just make a complete
an
fool
idiot
out of you.
you.
Yeah. That's an interesting, yeah, so,
Right, yeah. Yeah, there's a metaphor in there somewhere for all of us, ride the shark.
ride the shark, that's right.
It's gonna tear you up, right?
Yeah, and he also, watches it learn how to eat prey and and it learns that different, you know, different prey need different attack strategies, and he does it with, you know, between a crab versus a lobster.
Oh, right, yeah,
Which
the
is-
lobster, she kept trying to, the same strategy that she was using with the crab.
Right, and it
and
wasn't working, yeah,
Yeah, and then finally, it was like she used her whole body as almost like a tent and just enveloped it.
well, and it uses the gentleman, like he uses
Oh,
to
right,
kind of
as
this,
part of the strategy.
yeah, so
Mhm.
it's a very, very intelligent animal.
Yeah, he said that was the first time she had done that, used him as part of the,
Part,
her
yeah, yeah,
strategy.
he got the, yeah. And so through, yeah, so through this, he's also talking about like all these things are like, he's saying it's making him interacting with other people more also, because I think he became kind of a hermit, you know, not just giving up filmmaking, but just giving up like talking to people and friends and like, he's just,
Yeah.
but I think through this, it's interesting that he's kind of also finding himself more too, through interacting with this animal. Yeah, so he's, so it comes up to, and I'm probably missing a couple things with the last that kind of climactic scene is, well, he talks about the last time he
That he sees, that he,
interacts with her, and like, the octopus learns to play with
with the
fish, and then the octopus sees him and immediately swims over to him and like cuddles,
like on its chest.
yeah, with him, and
Uh,
and he's like, that's the last time I was able to have physical contact with her. And it's a sad moment, but it's like, he also knows that this is just part of the octopus's journey where, they mate. And then, and then once, it seemed like they laid their eggs pretty quickly after they mate. And then she doesn't eat at all. She just watches
stays there
them
with the eggs.
and stays with the eggs until they hatch. And I remember, for some reason, I remember it being a much longer time between, like, I remember watching it the first time, and it's like, oh my gosh, she's gonna die before she actually, and this, again, I think because Kylie read the book at the same time I watched the movie the first time, read the book, The Life of an Octopus. So I think I was getting the stories mixed up, but regardless, I think it's still the same thing of how instinctual and loving that sacrifice is for her young, and like knowing, hey, like, in order for my children to have the best chance of survival, like, I need to protect them, and that means I can't leave and go eat. I can't remember how long that was. If it's was it a couple of weeks?
I don't remember the specific.
See, I remember it being much longer. Again, I'm gonna have to look that. So she does, and there's animals that kind of try to attack, and she fights them off as best she can, and it's interesting. So as an octopus gets weak, it loses its color. So like the lighter, the gray octopus, like it's the color is leaving it as the life leaves.
Right, because they are incredible about camouflage, right? I mean, they normally they can change colors and textures, and their skin can look like rock. Or
Oh, yeah, they said that, yeah, the skin not only changes color, yeah, but changes textures to look spiny. Okay, so it says it takes about 150 to 230 days, or about 6 to 7 months for eggs to hatch.
Wow.
Which
So that would
no,
be
that's
half
a
of her
giant,
life.
that's a giant specific. Let me look up.
Oh, okay. She was a
common
Octopus vulgaris.
So this says anywhere from 2 to 10 months. Octopus vulgaris, yeah, which I think. So this says 85 to 128 days, which is still
It's a quarter of her life.
3 to 5 months. Yeah.
Her third. That's a long time for an
Yeah.
octopus when you only live a year.
Yeah. Yeah, this is.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so this says incubation for the giant is 6 to 7 versus the common octopus living in warm water can hatch out after a short 50 days.
Okay.
But that's warm water. Again, that's the other
Yeah.
thing the book that Kylie said is the warmer the water, obviously, right? The warmer the water, the shorter the incubation, right? Like,
Right.
just
that would
like
make
any,
sense,
it would make
actually.
sense that it's a nurturing environment versus cold environment. Things, things take longer to grow. This is
Right, and she was definitely in cold water. He made a point.
right, so I think that
That
that did make it longer. Anyway, so, so it did last well. It does, you know, so she also has to spend time aerating them with her tentacles and her siphon.
Oh, right, yeah.
That again. Something they do. And then eventually the eggs hatch. And I don't know if he actually watches it, but he sees, you know, with the egg, they're not shells, they're kind of these sac membrane, embryonic things.
Right.
And then shortly after she, you know, he sees it and it's weak and it's kind of floating around.
And
And
what,
animals
like
kind of,
500,000 of them or something like,
Oh,
there was
yeah.
some number that he
Oh, yeah.
mentioned that was
Yeah.
incredible.
it's one of those things of, there's a big, huge,
And then, but not that many of them survive.
yeah, because I mean, once they hatch, they're on their own. This says 20,000 to 80,000.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
I heard
but
that.
you know, again, it's I don't know what type of octopus is I'm sure each octopus type is different, but it's again, it's up to 10,000, tens of thousands of eggs. And it's, you know, it's basically, you know, they're they're using their numbers.
Mhm.
And then he sees, you know, crabs and fish just pecking at it, and then eventually a shark comes and just takes her
Nabbed it.
away.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, like, I don't know how to, like, it's a lot to process, you know, it's, on one hand, it's like, that's kind of, like, it needs a better, more dignified death than that, but then also it is kind of dignified in a sense. I mean, it's
Right.
like,
Yeah,
it's kind of this natural, it is somewhat natural and it's unnatural. I mean, it's not natural for us, but like, it is some,
and it's natural, it's the natural process of
Yeah.
that environment,
Yeah.
in that ecosystem, I
Yeah.
guess. And she's nourishing that ecosystem.
right, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's another opportunity for him. I think anyone else, it could just as well been like, that's my friend, I'm gonna give it a proper, you know, burial or whatever, but again, he's like, this is nature, like, this is how, you know, she is honored, she's being honored by, you know, nourishing the ecosystem, you know. Which I thought, again,
Yeah,
I
he
think it
was
takes a
very
lot of,
restrained
Yeah.
in not interfering.
Yeah.
In many instances.
so, and yeah, and so through that, he becomes more gentle with people, and, you know, when he brings his son out later, and his son finds a small baby octopus, and they I don't want to say assume, but they just kind of decide upon themselves that it was one of her babies. I mean,
Yeah, they
she's
can't
like
really know, I guess.
Yeah, but it's
you're
like,
just what
well,
if this
what
is
if,
one of hers?
it's
Yeah,
like, well, unless we're proved otherwise, who's to say it's not, and it makes a good story that like
right, yeah,
this baby octopus has an encounter with
with the son.
you know,
Mhm.
it's poetic.
It makes a good.
Well, I
definitely
know
makes a
that,
good
like,
story.
at least one of the, you know, babies make it, right?
Mhm. Right.
And,
Starts its own life
continue.
cycle.
and then he starts, he starts a foundation of saving the kelp forest, which we didn't talk too much about,
Mm.
but it's this whole thing is at the Cape of South
The West
South
Cape,
Africa.
right, the West Cape, I think it was.
Yeah, the west, because it's in the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
But it's very tumultuous waters, because it is circulating with the Pacific. But kind of in this area, there's just, with the way the kelp is, it dampens a lot of that currents and stuff. And so there's this very calm little area, and that's the kelp. So he is saving the kelp forest, and so he has this, started it's like half research preservation society group of, snorkelers, to kind of pass on this information and teaching, like, their role and their part of, this system, which I think is pretty cool.
That's good. Yeah, I noticed at the end credits said something about him not doing it alone anymore, and that he had developed this, or found this group.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he related a lot to, being a solitary human, finding a solitary creature, and it's like, well, if this creature can find friendship in me, then me being, a social, mammal, I could also be social.
It sounded like it nourished his relationship with his son too, because when he was talking at the beginning about his career and how it was just, sucking everything out of him. He talked about how that was affecting his family and his relationship with his wife and his son.
Well, it doesn't mention his wife, and so I'm one,
Oh, right. Yeah, you don't really see. I guess it said his family, didn't it?
yeah.
Oh, bless you.
Can edit that out. But I don't know, you could make assumptions, but, the fact that she's not mentioned, I think says something. That could have been part of, well, at least he could
Right.
save, the relationship with his son. Yeah, it's just a very, again, it's, again, talking about like all the small little things that happen that we, can destroy by just removing seemingly a kelp forest, and like learning about all the little animals and things that are.
Each one is important, which I remember is something that he said.
Yeah.
Each little tiny, no matter the size, it's important.
Yeah.
And just kind of the power of him showing up every day consistently and becoming part of her world and really the whole kelp forest world. And how because of that, he notices little nuances that you wouldn't normally notice if you just show up, as a visitor once in a blue moon or something.
I looked it up on Wikipedia for some stuff. Through his underwater tracking, he discovered 8 new species of shrimp. One of them named after him, the Heteromyces fosteri. I could show a picture, but it looks like a shrimp.
It does look like a shrimp.
He's currently married to Indian documentary filmmaker Swati Thyagarajan. Excuse me. And so his son is from a former wife.
Oh.
So that's part of it. So so I think he did, kind of use this relationship with an octopus to mend his personal relationships and just general how to interact in society, which I think is pretty cool.
It's amazing that, yeah, that it accomplished that.
The people are the San people of the Kalahari. Kalahari
Those are the tracker.
are the tracker, yeah. Yep. Which is in southern Africa. And that is it. Did we hit all of your notes?
Almost. There were a few things. I hit a lot on the consistency of him showing up every day. I don't know that
Yeah,
that impacted me a lot, just because it builds trust. He gets to see her as she really is,
yeah,
because he shows up every single day. You know, he notices those different little changes. How she gets smooth, bumpy, she has horns, you know, sometimes she gets those
Yeah.
little horns, and I'm like, what are you using those for?
yeah.
Oh, and that she walks on two legs.
Oh, that was the
Sometimes.
interesting, yeah,
That was really interesting, like bipedal.
yeah, yeah, likened it to like a lady in a dress.
In a dress, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of, yeah, seeing it every day, and that idea of like, there's gotta be times where he, like, seemingly nothing happened,
Mhm.
right? I mean, nothing, like, cause
Nothing new. or
we
nothing
talked
different.
and, there were like, maybe, we talked about what, maybe 5 events,
Uh-huh.
so that's 5 days out of,
Out of
300.
350
And especially
or
when-
60, yeah.
especially when there's moments where, like, I mean, yeah, when she's just watching the nest,
Mhm.
right, that obviously nothing much, I mean, she didn't eat, so there's, I mean, so this idea, and I think that's how we can also approach our relationships, especially long-term ones, of like, it's okay that things don't happen.
Right.
Like, we're
right.
always, and especially with, we watch, TV shows or, sitcoms or movies, and it's like, the relationship has to progress,
Mhm.
and if it doesn't progress, like, well, it's stagnant and it dies. It's like, well, no, that's not part of it. And
Necessarily,
I
right.
think it's interesting that he, just, because there's gotta been those moments where you just went, and
You
how
just
long is he
know.
there? I'm sure that there's sometimes he was down for an hour with these, longer
Mhm.
chase sequences, versus sometimes he probably went down for a couple minutes,
Right.
maybe,
and was
you
done for
never
the
know.
day.
But
Right, yeah.
I think the idea of he came into this without assumptions, which I think is how we should
Right.
all,
Yeah,
know,
that is a really good point. And at the beginning, he talked about his brain, your brain upgrades because of the chemicals from entering the cold water, and how,
oh, that's
you
right.
know, being in the cold water, it sounded like was hard at first, but then he says after about a year you crave the cold.
Yeah,
And so he has adapted to that level where, because he went every single day,
yeah.
he actually craves it. And that's hard. That's hard for me to imagine, because I really hate getting into cold water. But I wonder if I did it every day.
I
would
think so,
change.
but it's the same thing where if you're actually, like, it's one of those things of, if you're, to an extent, right, if it's frigid cold, it doesn't, but like, it's only cold if you get out. Like, if you're actually in the water, it's not
Right, your
that-
body
that bad.
adjusts.
And so, yeah, that's
Mhm.
interesting. Here's a picture of the little octopus running on 2 legs.
Oh,
I wonder if
yeah.
there's one that shows it more. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
the
there it
left,
is,
there
where
it
the
is.
2
Oh, yeah,
legs
there
are
it is.
just hopping along.
Crazy. That middle picture at the top there kind of
This
looks
this
like,
one?
yeah, looks like
Yeah.
they're striding along there. Just going for a walk.
Yeah.
Just going for a walk. Oh, yeah, and he says an octopus is basically a snail that lost its shell in evolution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know why that struck me, but
Yeah, well, and I know, so
Very big
octopuses
snail.
don't, but I believe squid do have like a single bone. I mean, they're still technically invertebrates. But I think there is like a small little bone plate. But yeah, they're
Mhm.
just very squishy
Right, yeah,
animals.
kind of vulnerable looking and.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's the thing with, it's always interesting with water pressure. Keeps things together, because everything's
Oh, yeah.
pressure.
Mhm.
And it's not, I mean, and jellyfish are the same way, where if you pull them out, they like,
They just kind
they
of disintegrate,
lose,
right?
yeah, they lose their shape, like they use the water kind of holds them together.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I was fascinated with the section where he talked about the octopus drilling into a specific place into the mollusk
Yes.
shell.
Thanks for, yes,
Oh my
that is,
goodness, that was,
that, yeah, thanks for writing that one down, because I had forgotten about that. Yeah, so, it finds out that there's only a specific place on a, if you drill a hole in a specific place on a, on a snail or mollusk or any sort of shelled, I think there's cephalopods. I could be wrong. That could also be, cephalopod also could be a whale. I can't remember. Anyway,
not versed
yeah,
in
if they drill a
it.
certain spot, it like weakens,
It like relaxes.
it relaxes them. It pretty much gives it a lobotomy, and then it just becomes just, and then and then it's able to suck
it out.
suck it out.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we found all these shells, and it has the exact hole, or the hole is in the exact same spot on all these shells.
Well, it's just the fact that it exists,
It's
that the
almost-
octopus has a drill, is like carrying its own
Yeah.
tools around with it,
Yeah,
you
it,
know?
yeah, it uses its beak. Yeah,
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, they have a
that
beak,
used?
and I don't-
Okay.
or it does have a drill. I don't know, but
I
yeah,
don't know,
they
I
are
thought he said
beaked.
it was a drill, but
Yeah.
like some body part that they use, it could be their beak, but I don't remember them specifically saying.
Oh yeah, I was right. It's a cephalopod, which is a type, which is, you know, your octopuses, your nautilus.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, and he had quite a collection of shells. In that I noticed that he had kind of it looked like a big wooden, almost like a card catalog cabinet
Yeah.
in that one where they were talking about the drilling into the shells, and it looked like that entire thing was just chock full of shells.
Yeah.
And just the artistry of the film too, because there was one point where he had looked like he had put a camera inside a pile of shells and kind of did this soft focus thing where it focused on him pulling a shell out and then it blurred again, and I don't know, it was just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, even if you know the story and you just have it on mute, I mean, I think it's just watching the,
Gorgeous photography.
you know, just,
Oh, yeah.
you know, how fluid, and again, there's 8 tentacles that are just all fluid, and they almost all can do their own thing. Again, I think because it's all part of its own brain, basically, that each tentacle can kind of follow and do its own independent thing. and how that's coordinated.
Yeah,
It's pretty much.
it was very. I questioned, is he a scientist or an artist or a little of both?
That's a good question. And I would
It seems
say,
like he studied, you know, he studied like a scientist, but maybe wasn't a scientist going into it.
yeah, it's like he's a scientist, but comes at it with an artistic approach.
Yeah, yeah. More than just pure science.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and I think it is the perfect blend between science and art.
Yeah.
When do you think about this extremely pragmatic, again, trying to find,
Right.
come back and
The
find him and
eight
tracking and stuff.
New
And
species of shrimp, or yeah, learning how to track
yeah,
where the octopus lives and.
Right.
Mhm.
but then the artistry of how he's filming it and a lot of that stuff, I
Yeah.
think he does.
Recognizes the
He has
beauty
an
into-
eye
Definitely has.
for that kind of stuff.
Mhm. And then at the end, kind of at the end, around minute 58-ish, he makes a comment about the kelp forest. He says, the forest mind, and this isn't an exact quote, the forest mind, that big creature, and talks about it like keeping things in balance over millions of years. So maybe that goes back to, when we were talking about how she died and was carried off by the shark, and, it seems harsh, but maybe it's not harsh.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
part of the ecosystem and the
Right.
balance of things.
Yeah. Right, yeah, because it's talking about the actual organism is the kelp force, it is an organism, not, I mean, it's
Right,
made up
as
of
a
organism,
whole.
but it is. And
Yeah,
therefore it is living millions, it's a million-year-old organism that has
Mhm.
kind of learned and has, been able to learn over millions of years. It's not just, the lifespan of a single, animal.
a single octopus or a single
Yeah.
shark that
Yeah.
carries them on. And then another thing that I wondered is, what if it was my shark teacher? What if the whole
Yeah.
film is from the perspective of a different animal?
Yeah,
And, would there have been as much of a bond as there was with that octopus? Maybe not.
and that's, I mean, it's, yeah, it's an interesting question that I'd like to ask him.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's one of those things that the potential could have been there, but it wasn't. It was somehow this special bond with this one animal that it just happened. And
right.
it could have happened with any of them. It's not like it could only happen with an octopus, although,
Right.
I mean, you could say that the intelligence level of an octopus lends itself to that over a shark,
Mhm.
which doesn't have, but that's getting kind of
Obviously.
elitist of, he probably wouldn't agree with that, because he would say
Uh-huh.
no, these are all, can't, there's no hierarchy of
Yeah,
of
that's
these
where he
animals.
says they're all important.
Yeah, so maybe he could, and there are lessons to be learned from all these other animals, but he's learning it from,
Yeah,
through his story, it's learning through
through the
an
octopus.
octopus. Yeah, you could make the argument that anyone could have learned anything from
Mhm.
any of this stuff, just,
Yeah, they all have their stories of how they survive and how they
yeah,
produce and, how they move through their environment and what they impact and.
yeah, I mean, it's, it's, I mean, I think it's like, scripture is like, yeah, God can speak through anything, but he chose to speak, through Balaam's donkey, right? I think this is just a moment where God decided to speak through an octopus.
To this person.
And this
one
person, I don't wanna,
Yeah,
I'm a bit hesitant to say that because I don't like, those aren't the words he used, he never used the word God, so it's like, I don't wanna use that because that's feeding my story into his.
yeah.
Which I don't necessarily wanna do, but I think, to me, that is, and
Right. It is
he
kind of a
uses,
spiritual connection.
yeah, he
there.
uses, I could use God, he uses ecosystem and nature and the kelp forest, but I think those are
Right,
different words for the same thing that's happening, so.
right. For us, I think we recognize a larger power
Yeah,
involved there.
but I think, I think we would both agree that there's something larger going on than just an octopus and just me,
Right, right,
Like,
absolutely.
which I think is
would
what,
agree with that.
I think that's what, to me, relationships are, when it becomes more than just,
Mhm.
thing A and thing B. There's
Right, there's a
C-
connection
a
that
C
happens.
element that,
Mhm.
pretty good.
Watch it again.
Yeah, it's
I would
something that
totally
could
watch
easily
it.
be watched, once a year or so. Any other comments before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I was glad that you brought up the part about her saving herself by getting on the back of the shark.
Yeah.
Because that was probably my favorite moment in the
Yeah.
whole, I mean, I laughed out loud when I
It
saw
is,
that.
it is pretty, it is one of those like,
It was like, oh my goodness, that is just so brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I think that's all I have.
yeah, recommend it. Susan recommends it. Matt isn't here, but he enjoyed it quite a bit. And it's only like 90 minutes, so it's not too long.
Not a big time commitment.
All right, well, next week, or next month, I guess next month, is our last one of the year, and we will be reading, Islands of Abandonment by Carol Flynn, I think. Yes, Carol Flynn. It's subtitled Nature Rebounding in Post-Human Landscape. So, here are a couple of, I think it's been kind of, there's like a second edition, so it's been reprinted. Check it out. I'm looking forward to it. She seems like a pretty cool person. Carol Flynn, I think I said something else. That's the book we'll finish up, and then I will come up with another 12 books and movies to start 2023.
Good,
So
looking forward to it.
that is it. Find the book at your local library or anywhere but Amazon. Again, I usually like to go thrift books, buy a book that's already been made, or I use, if you go to Libro FM, this works mainly with audiobooks. But if you go here, you can connect it to another library, or excuse me, another, oh yeah, this isn't my computer, I can't log in. You can connect it to a bookstore, so you can connect it to the Raven here in town. I've also connected it with, I think it's called I See Me, EYESEEME, which is it's a Black-owned bookstore. In Kansas City, University City, Missouri. So you can check that one out too. Like to support as local as I can, so, or just order it from, yeah, I mean, most bookstores nowadays, you basically order it from them, and even if they don't have it, they, you know, they have the warehouse, and they just order, they just get it from the wholesaler anyway, and get it, so.
So they'll have it. Is there a good place to get ebooks from that helps out your local bookseller?
That's another good question.
I would love
Ebooks are a
to
bit
do that.
trickier. I've done it through the library.
Oh, okay.
That's about it. I don't know, I don't know if bookstores really have.
Option.
Let me look real quick. Don't know if they really do ebooks.
This is the Ravens website.
Yeah. And,
There you go.
that's interesting. Yeah. Paperback, hardcover. I mean, I'm sure, I'm wondering if you could just type in ebook and find it, but I think, I feel like most of those places are kind of like connected with whatever you bought it from, whether it's an Amazon Kindle, like, yeah, you pretty much buy ebooks from Amazon.
Amazon, right.
Um,
Apple. I bought books from Amazon or from Apple. Goodness, you're
um, I can stop sharing this.
We'll just do a sneezing encore.
There you go.
Sorry.
But yeah, I don't know, that's something I have to Google about finding, you know, sustainably sourced ebooks or books on, I mean, I don't know if they do tape anymore.
Right. Well, if they do audiobooks, I guess if they do audiobooks.
Or CDs, you know, that, I guess that's true, I'm thinking wrong. Yeah, I don't know, I think that some of that stuff, like I have a Kindle, but I think the only way to do it is to get it through, like it's only connected to Amazon.
I think that is true with the Kindle. Yeah.
So I don't know about other tablets or, I don't know how to do that. I don't know. Someone out there. can
That'll be
know
something to
more
look
about it.
into.
Yeah, that's what I'm unfortunate. I got a Kindle thinking, oh, this is great, and I can just carry this around and it's lighter, but then I'm like, but now I'm stuck in supporting Amazon. I do, so I have actually ebooks at the library I've been able to rent, and it gets through to my Kindle.
Okay.
So I connect to some of them through that. But as far as like buying them from other places and downloading it, I'm not familiar with. I would need to research them.
I'll look into the library.
So that's it. So yeah, so we will be discussing islands of abandonment. Sorry, this is taking so long. On the 28th of December. It's the last, obviously, last Wednesday of the month. So find the book,
All right.
read the book. We'll talk about abandoning islands. Great. All right.
Sounds good.